For this lesson, we're going to focus on the different forms of numbers. Our main goal is that we can change back and forth between fractions, decimals, and percents. Something new this year that we may not have seen in the past is repeating decimals and writing those as fractions. So to get started, let's first review our place value chart, because that might come up for later. So let's go to the left of the decimal. We tend to know those better. The ones place, tens, hundreds, thousands, and then after thousands, we usually think like thousands, millions, billions, but before that we have thousands, then we have 10,000s. If we were to write the next one, it would be 100,000s, and then those repeats. So then it would be million, 10 million, 100 million, billion, 10 billion, 100 billion. On the other side of the decimal, we have the tenth. So that is where we tend to get confused, is that there is no one-th on the other side. It's a tenth with a th at the end, and then hundredth with a th, thousandth, and then same as on the other side, then it would be 10,000th. So it's really hard to hear the difference. It's got that th sound at the end. So when you're rounding numbers, if it's telling you to turn this fraction into a decimal and you have to round to the nearest hundredth, remember that if it's 5 or more, you round up. If it's 4 or less, you keep it the same. It's going to stay. And if I wanted to round to this number, for example, I would look at the number behind it. And it's the number behind it that tells me should I go up or stay the same. So let's look at the fraction to decimal. So let's, for example, look at 4/5. And what that fraction bar really means is division. And this is supposed to be a division bar here. So that would be 4 divided by 5. And then we could actually do this long division. For this example, we can just put that in the calculator, 4 divided by 5, and we would get 0.8. So our key here to turn a fraction to a decimal is we are just going to divide. And then let's look at decimal to fraction. So going backwards from that, there's two different rules here. If it is a terminating decimal, a decimal that stops, you're going to put it over the place value. So let's look at an example of that first. So maybe I have the decimal 0.57. It terminates, it stops after the 7. So we look at the place value, so we just talked about that, and that is in the 5 is in the tenths, 7 is in the hundredth, so it's in the hundredths place. So then this becomes 57 over 100 because that last digit is in the hundredths place. And the proper way to read 0.57 is 57 hundredths. We could also have a repeating decimal. This one is a little bit different. This one's going to be 1 less than the place value. 1 less than the place value. So an example is if I have the repeating decimal 0.62 and the 62 repeats, so 0.626262. Well, the last digit, the 2, is in the hundredths place, but instead of 62 over 100, we want 1 less than that. So 1 less than 100 is 99. And just some extra examples. to make sure that we are understanding. So if I have 0.8, the 8 is in the tens place, so it'd be 8 over 10. Or if I had a 0.8 repeating, the 8 is in the tens place, so it'd be 8 over, with the repeating, it's 1 less than the place value, so 1 less than 10 is 9. And then let's do decimal to percent. So if I want to turn, for example, if I have the decimal 0.725, this would be equal to 72.5%. The shortcut for doing this is that we are just moving that decimal 2 places to the right to make a decimal into a percent. What we're actually doing is we're multiplying by 100. And think of it as percent is out of 100, so you multiply it by 100. That's what moves the decimal 2 places to the right. So then, if I wanted to go from percent to decimal, so going backwards, let's say I had the percent 325%. So we're going backwards this time, so I'm going to move the decimal, and if there is no decimal, you just put 1 at the end. You move the decimal to the backwards, so 2 to the left. So 1, 2, and this would be the number 3.25. So 325% is a decimal 3.25. And anytime you have a percent bigger than 100, or 100 or bigger, you're going to have that whole number part in a decimal. And then a vocab review. If it says write the equivalent value or an equivalent expression, that just means they're equal. So 325% is equivalent to 3.25, or 4/5 is equivalent to 0.8. So these are all examples of equivalent values. And then the only one we haven't done yet is to kind of go all the way from a percent, or actually let's say from a fraction to percent. But what we can do is take it one step at a time. So we went from a fraction to a decimal when we did this one here. And then we did the decimal to percent when we did this one here. So if you want to go from a fraction all the way to a percent, you just take one step at a time. Turn the fraction into a decimal, and then turn the decimal into percent. So an example would be, let's say I have the fraction 3/4, and I want to turn it into a percent. So let's first turn it into a decimal, and we're going to divide. So I'm going to put in my calculator 3 divided by 4, and I'm going to get 0.75. And then from there, we're going to use the rule for decimal to percent. We're going to move that decimal 2 times to the right, 1, 2, and we end up with 75%. So we just take it one step at a time.